All right, how's everyone doing today? We will get started shortly. I'm just trying to figure all this information out, which video. All right. How is everyone doing today? If you have a question or comment, I can read it for you. Okay. All right. So, thank you for coming today. I believe it is 10:30, so we're going to get started. Today is part of our monthly series of professional development for physical education teachers and homeschool parents, although it can be used for anyone who wants to learn more. Okay. Now, quick note, you might notice my eye. Got a little red in my eye because of subconjunctivitis or something. Normal, painless, and harmless. All right, but it makes it look a little weird. Makes it look like I got punched, but no biggie. All right, doesn't hurt. I'm Spencer Aiken with the Stronger Together Education Academy. My small goal is to help as many physical education teachers and homeschool parents implement a fitness-based physical education curriculum so that your kids, your students, learn how to apply a lifelong fitness, lifetime fitness goal curriculum, fitness journey, so that they can walk into any physical activity and feel confident, because it's about developing skills, the skills of physical literacy, including strength, balance, stability, movement, flexibility, and targeting, which is spatial and kinesthetic awareness, which might be our next workshop webinar. I'm debating. So you guys get to vote. Should I do spatial and kinesthetic awareness, or should I do one on using the BOSU and gym balls, the big Swiss physio balls, whatever you want to call them? Those are the two debates that I have in my head for March 9th, which would be our next free professional development webinar here on StreamYard. So do you want to learn more about using the apparatuses or the equipment of gym balls and BOSUs, or do you want to learn more about using movement for targeting skills like catching and throwing and footwork and balance stuff? That's your guys' decision. We'll do a poll on the web page, on the Facebook page, Stronger Together, facebook.com/groups/Stronger Together Education. All right. All right. But today we are talking on squats, push-ups, and lunges, because those are three major exercises, what we call fundamental and or foundation exercises, right? So if you understand there are 7 major movements, squats and lunges are the names of the actual movements. A push-up is a press, which is one of the major movements. They are our foundational movements. We will teach you all of this in our personal trainer exam prep course, which is in the comments if you're interested in learning more about becoming more knowledgeable about fitness training, whether it's for you or for your students, although I highly recommend it. In the fitness world industry, the personal trainer is the person who understands most about strength training. Nutritionists are for nutrition. Physical therapists are for rehab. Doctors are for medical ailments. Okay, chiropractors are for spinal adjustments and manipulations, right? A personal trainer is who you should want to be and or could be if you're trying to implement fitness-based PE. They are the go-to resource for that, all right? So if you decide to become certified, we can help you with that. You could also turn that into a side hustle, as people call it nowadays, maybe on the afternoons, weekends, or early mornings, earn upwards of $100 an hour, because I know some trainers who make $120 to $150 an hour. All right, so extra income is always nice, because as we know, teachers, we don't get paid what we deserve, let's put it that way. All right, anyway, squats, push-ups. Lunges. 3 foundational major exercises that unfortunately, when we're learning, our students haven't mastered them yet. They need to learn, practice, master. So we want to show you where the likely breakdowns are so that we can help you with those. All right? So once you learn and begin to practice, and once you master squats, push-ups, and lunges, they become the staple of an exercise program that can last you for the rest of your life. Meaning, once you learn it, it's like riding a bike. You don't necessarily need to relearn ever. You might do small tweaks as you get older and your ankles become less flexible or less mobile. Your shoulders may start to hurt as we get older or injured. So there are minor tweaks we may have to make, but the base fundamental foundation will always be there. So our job as teachers is to teach them how to do it so that they're smart enough cognitively so that they can make changes as necessary. All right? So we'll get back. I'm going to step on back and I'm going to start showing you what we mean. If you have any questions, please comment. I can read the comments right here. We'll get to it as soon as we can. All right? Thank you for coming. Let's get started on the active portion. Now, you do not need to actively participate, although learning, visual learners, right? We learn by watching. Kinesthetic learners, we learn by doing. You have to get up and do. All right, so if you're an active learner, please feel free to get up and do. All right, so here's the thing. Squats are a instinctive, natural intrinsic movement that if you have a child squat down, their form is probably going to be perfect. And by child, I mean 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and stuff like that. It's as we start to grow and we start to do squats in, say, middle school, when we hit that growth spurt, our body hasn't necessarily acclimated to our new distances. A lot of that has to do with balance, right? So as our limbs become longer, we're not necessarily as skilled in our new body, and so we have to relearn a whole lot of movements, all right? So understand that from the beginning, when you are instructing, a lot of what it is about maintaining balance. Balance is very important, and our students have a difficult time understanding that. So I'm going to give you an example. So a lot of our students, our kids, are going to be squatting and they don't know how to sit back because they don't feel comfortable and or balanced during a squat. So they get this forward thing where they just drop straight down. Well, that's not a proper squat, right? We don't want our body traveling forward. We want our hips, hip bone right here, going backwards. It's actually a pelvic tilt that initiates that squatting technique, right? So our students are afraid of that very tilt. So the first thing we look at is, are they getting a pelvic tilt? Remember, a squat finishes with that posterior pelvic tilt. So now that's what a hinge is, one of the other foundational movements of the 7 hip hinge, where we're doing like a kettlebell swing. We get our hips underneath us. That's a hinge. Hinge is the finishing movement of a squat, all right? It's also the initiation, sticking your pelvis out, right? So are they taking these 2 points right here and sticking them back? If we sit into a chair, it becomes more natural. So from the chair position, I wouldn't sit here, I would sit down, right? Now, I can rise straight up and I have a squat. So a lot of times we will instruct our students, if they have a difficult time learning, we can do it on a chair and or a bench. So if I'm on the front of the bench and I can actually be on the side of the bench, I get my feet about 3 inches in front and I just sit down. Now, I just need to stand up from this position. Now, as long as I don't move my feet again, I will sit into the exact same position. So you're gonna teach your students, just sit back onto the bench and rise up and down. We can start to add weight, whether it be a goblet style holding of a kettlebell, dumbbell style holding of dumbbells, barbell on our shoulders. All of those become effective means of practicing our squat. So my feet are in the same place. I will slowly lower. I will be safe, and I'll be able to rise up. Now, in order for you to help them replicate the movement, you can have them hold so they start to get a feeling of where they're at, right above the bench. So sit down to right above the bench, and they're starting to get that feeling of, this is where I am. Your body will remember. That's what targeting is about. Kinesthetic awareness and spatial awareness. Our body is learning our body awareness, our body positions. That's what our proprioceptors are doing, right? They're telling our body, this is where we're moving to. So by using a bench or a chair or a box, you can help them build up, first and foremost, their confidence, their belief in themselves, and then third, mastering the technique of sitting back into a chair, because you're gonna rise up just like you're getting up out of a chair, okay? That's where we find the majority of students, I don't wanna use the word fail, but don't grasp it perfectly, is the sitting back into that position, all right? Now, from the ground up, let's start with our feet next. All right, so a lot of times, where are our feet gonna be while we're doing a squat? Now, there is differences in anatomy. Some people have longer femurs, so it is not uniform how wide your feet are. Most of the time, with most people, it's shoulder width apart, okay? I tell people your big toe is at the width of your shoulder, the width of your widest part of your shoulder. Then it becomes, where are my feet? As you should know, your feet have a natural external rotation of about 7 degrees. So how do we establish that natural position without thinking about it? Simple. We do what we call the Weeble wobble. We simply, you can close your eyes if you want, raise your foot up as you shuffle side to side, 3 or 4 of these side to side wobbles, and then finish. Your feet will naturally find their most comfortable groove. My toes are pointed out about 7 degrees right now. This is my natural squatting groove, okay, my natural position. Where my feet turn out becomes my most comfortable position. So we can have our students just weeble wobble side to side and then plant. And now we're gonna stand right there. If they're ready to go and you don't trust they'll do it perfectly, you can hand them a weight right there and just have them do their squats, right? You could actually put the chair behind them, do the weeble wobble, and then have them sit into that position. Now, we've fixed and or corrected 2 things that typically go wrong. Where do your feet go? And are you sitting back into a chair, all right? Simple and easy mechanics. Allow them to learn, and we're simplifying it without making it seem too simple, right? Because a lot of times we're not trying to seem like it's difficult, and we're not trying to teach over their head. We're trying to teach to them. Remember, a lot of times it's about getting to their level, all right? So, feet, weeble wobble with that natural turnout. Hips, traveling back. Now, how do we maintain our balance? Okay, remember, balancing is about maintaining your center of gravity. Half of you moving forward, half of you moving back, maintaining that balance point. So a lot of times when we are having our hips properly travel backwards, we have a tendency to forward lean. Why? Because we're offsetting this hip placement, right? So as my hips go back, something has to balance the opposite side, and a lot of times it's my chest. That's why it's actually somewhat difficult for students to learn body weight squats, because there's no offset counterbalance. We're not used to doing something without weight in our hands to counterbalance us. So the best way to do it if you don't have weight is your hands out in front. So as my butt goes back, my hands are out in front to counterbalance that. If I keep my hands here or here, I don't have that counterbalance, so I tend to bend forward, which, as we know, is not the best squatting position. That's not what we're trying to do, but that's what happens a lot. We get this squat technique, right? You've probably seen your students doing this, and they'll count out 10 reps, but all they're really doing is a modified kettlebell swing, right? So we get our hands out in front, and it helps us to stay back, maintaining that balance position. That's key. That's very important, right? So if there's no weight and you're doing bodyweight squats, how are you maintaining that balance, right? You could sit back into the wall, get close enough to where when you go back, and now I just drop to that position, I can do that, and my butt is just barely dragging down the wall, because now the fact that I can get into the wall helps me to maintain balance, because I won't fall. But I'm worried about falling if I do this, right? If I don't have a weight in front, I may be worried about falling, all right? That's key. No one wants to fall. All right. Eyes. Where do we look? Now, where we look, especially when we're learning how to squat, is very important, because we don't want to get distracted. As you'll learn in the course, we have 3 stages of learning a new skill: cognitive, associative, and autonomous. And during the cognitive stage, we're learning that we need to focus. All eyes on the task at hand, right? So all eyes on the task at hand means other things become a distraction, and we will lose the skill if we don't do it properly, right? So when we are learning a skill, a little bit of a side note, we don't coach too much, we don't cue too much, and we don't try to correct too much, because they're not going to be able to learn the skill. And listen, they're too narrow focused, and anything outside of this peripheral is a distraction. So we have to understand that. We may stop them, but we have a difficult time trying to cue them while they're trying to learn the new skill. This applies to squats, it applies to every exercise, it applies to throwing. It's difficult to have them fix it by us cueing them and then figuring it out while they're doing it. Stop them, cue, coach, fix, coach up, teach, instruct, whatever you want to call it. Have them stop so that it's their safety. All right? Now, where do we look while we're squatting? I have heard that we look up. I'm going to get close so you can see my eyes. All right, so we have heard, or people have said, when you're squatting, you're supposed to look up. But what they tend to do while they're doing that is, so if I'm squatting, oh, I'm supposed to look up. So they'll do this, and now my head going back is throwing my hips and my knees and my ankles off, and now my balance is off. Well, here's the problem with that. You're not supposed to look up, per se, as much as you're supposed to look straight ahead. So if I'm squatting, let's say I have the barbell on my shoulders, right, and I'm holding it, and I'm about to squat, I'm going to pick 2 points straight ahead at my eye line when I'm standing tall. Now, as I go up, I'm maintaining that position of my eyes of where that eye line would have been if I was standing tall. So if I'm looking straight ahead right here, if you can see my eyes are looking up, but only because I'm now down. I was actually looking straight ahead, and as I go down, my eyes are now technically looking up. Doesn't mean my head is looking up. My eyes are just focused on that point. That's the focal point. That's going to keep us from getting distracted, right? Now, it helps. We don't want to get distracted, okay? So we look straight ahead, and as we go down, our eyes are actually looking up. That keeps us focused, which does help with our learning. And now we practice and then master that skill from there. Okay? All right. So we have our feet shoulder width apart generally, slightly turned out. Our knees, okay, our feet, our head, our eyes, and our hips. Now we have our knees. All right, so a lot of times the knees are reactionary, meaning they react to where this is and they react to where our ankle is. And it's very important to understand. If you have tightness in your ankles, knees, or hips, you're gonna have issues with your depth, your range of motion. So maybe warm up, maybe do some mobility movements, maybe do some stretching, and that'll help loosen up your muscles and your joints, okay? All right, a lot of times our knees start to trail forward because they're going forward because our hips are trying to go backwards and we're trying to maintain that center of gravity. Our knees naturally travel slightly forward. It's just once they start to go past your toes that it becomes problematic. Now, here's the thing. There is a new belief, and it is social media driven conjecture, that going up past your knees is good, bad, or indifferent. Here's the thing. There is a positional awareness that you have to develop. For you to do squats, heavy squats, weighted squats, barbell squats, and think it's okay for your knees to travel past your toes, that's positionally incorrect. So if I was doing weighted heavy squats and I started getting this position, see how my knees are going past my toes, and I try to get down, I'm putting unnecessary, undue pressure on my patella tendon, the tendons right here, and the quadriceps tendon. That's not correct. However, if I was just doing a bodyweight lunge, I can do shift movement of allowing that to happen. Two different exercises, but don't correlate the two things together. Doing weighted exercise shifting forward, not necessarily smart. Doing deceleration exercises and or strengthening exercises without any weight is actually teaching the body how to move properly. The problem is we don't want to put extra weight on our frame while we're trying to do movement analysis stuff, basically. All right? So, very important to understand that. All right. So, knees. Be careful of where your knees are going and understand the intent. Teach your student the intent of what they're trying to do. All right? Now, next becomes the ankles. All right. As you may or may not know, the ankle is very important in your movements. Tight, stiff calf muscles can become problematic. Our tight soleus can become very problematic. Side note, when you are working your calves and or doing ankle raises, if the knee is bent, the gastrocnemius is disengaged. When the leg is straight, the gastrocnemius is engaged. So if you're doing calf raises, it is vital that you do both straight leg and bent knee because the gastroc only works when it's straight. The soleus works when it's both, straight or bent. Therefore, if you're trying to emphasize the soleus, you'll do bent knees. Okay, right? So bent knee calf raises like we've seen before, just like this. See how my knee is bent? If I was straight, now I'm working both. All right? It's very important to understand. So both of those are actually important. But if we have lack of mobility in our ankles and or stiff muscles, calf, gastrocnemius, and so on, when we do a squat and we get low enough, we can tend to raise up on our toes. Two fixes for that. Either put a wedge or a plate under it, which is becoming very popular nowadays. You put something underneath your feet, like a wedge. Give me the wedge. or a plate, and that helps with you. Do it properly. So we have a wedge right here, and this is just a wedge, okay? Very affordable, inexpensive. And all I'm gonna do is I can adjust how high up or how low I am. So if I'm having troubles with my squats and I'm coming up on my toes, I can not fix the problem, but deal with the problem and still be safe. By now I'm doing squats where I can actually put my weight into my heel and squat safer and more proper until, quote unquote, I learn to loosen up my ankle and stay back on my heels. Very important. And how would I loosen up my ankles? By doing ankle mobility drills, toe raises, calf stretches, both straight and bent. So a straight leg calf raise or a bent knee calf raise is going to work on our mobility. Very important to understand that. All right? So that's a great starter on our squats. Okay? So ask a question in the comments right now. I'm going to give you about a few seconds, kind of catch your breath. I know it's a lot of information, but let's see where we're at. Okay? So let me get a quick sip. You guys can catch your breath. And now we're going to move into push-ups. All right, so here's the thing with push-ups. Most of the time, we start our push-ups in what is a hold position. And most people, when they do a hold, have their hands equal with their shoulder. So our hands are up here. Because when we are in this position, we're actually structurally strong because our shoulder is very strong in that position, right? However, that's not where we push up from. If you think about a bench press, we bench press from here, not from here, but they want to hold their hands up this high versus where they're naturally supposed to be, all right? So, give me 1 second, Tiffany, do you want to do this? All right, so I'm going to have someone come in for us so we can demonstrate, and you'll see exactly what I mean by positional awareness. Okay, so she's going to have her hands even with her chest, slightly wider than her shoulders, with her elbows at a 45-degree angle. All right, so first show the bad squat or bad push-up position with your hands too high on your shoulders. So this is where a lot of people want to be. Her hands are directly under her shoulder, which means she can't properly get her full range of motion. The shoulder is limited in its capabilities. Now, you feel strong, but you'll never be able to get to your full depth, meaning your chest won't go all the way to the ground. That's why you'll see a lot of your students get as low as they can, which is about halfway, and then be forced to come back up. It's never a proper, perfect, or generally acceptable push-up because of the lack of range of motion. Remember, range of motion is important, but not everything be all end all. So now she's going to lower her hands to where they should be, but if she were to hold this push-up position, she wouldn't necessarily feel as strong. But as she goes down, her weight naturally shifts forward a little bit, and now you'll notice her hands are even with her chest. Okay, so right here, hands, even chest. Her hands are slightly wider than her shoulder, and her elbow is back at a 45-degree angle. So a lot of times when our hands are too high, you can rest. When our hands are too high, we tend to get our elbows way up here. We want our hands to be at about a 45, because when we're bench pressing, you look at my elbow right now, it's at a 45-degree angle. I don't want it to be up here. I'm not strong. That's basically forcing all the strength to come from the top portion of the pec, and that's not where I want it. I don't want to be doing my push-ups like this. I want to be doing my push-ups like this. This is where I'm the strongest. This is where we're using the sternal portion of our pecs. So we'll be right here, all right? So Tiffany's going to do a couple of push-ups, and we're just going to reinforce for you to get the visual of what it's supposed to look like. Now, here's another key. Generally speaking, legs close together. so that you can contract your glutes. That will help with your body awareness for your hips, and then she's going to drop into her depth. So this is what your push-ups should look like. Feet close together. Contract your glutes. Keep your hips elevated so that your tailbone and your scapula maintain an even balanced position. A lot of times our students will allow their hips to drop too much and then go down from there. Bad position. They'll keep their hips up high and go down from there. Bad position. Eliminating any potential range of motion because we don't have hip control. How do we fix that? We like to start, for anyone having difficulty with hip and pelvic control, we start in our bear position. Do you remember bear? Okay, so you get your knees in close. Now by having her knees in close, my hips can't move. Your hips and pelvis, go with the upper body movement. So she's gonna drop. See how her hips and pelvis naturally follow the upper body movement? She doesn't have to worry about controlling that anymore because her knees are in that place. And that's what we want. Scoot forward just a little bit. Okay, so now watch her hips right here. She's gonna raise up. She's gonna get as low as she can and press it out. So her hips are now eliminated from a possible problem, and it becomes smoother and easier for most kids. Thank you, Tiffany. You have a seat on the bench. Okay. All right, so here's what we're talking about. Her hands got better, but hypothetically in that scenario, her hips were dipping too much, right? So we eliminate that by putting the structure underneath the hips. Now her hips are gonna rise straight up and down. She will not potentially be able to get as low, but she's still working her chest muscles, her pectoralis major, right? In a proper manner. She's not putting undue pressure on the shoulder, and she is working through her possible range of motion. What do I mean by possible range of motion? The knees in bear position get in the way. So because the knees are so close, we can't really clear them out, meaning it's hard to get all the way to the floor. However, it's a trade-off getting the hips under control versus range of motion, that when your kids can't seem to control their pelvis and hips, we will add that in as a method for them to learn how to control their hips. We love doing bear push-ups because they're actually a little bit more intense on the beginning part, meaning we actually get very good strength training through the full range of motion, unlike what we feel like when we're doing regular push-ups. They're very easy until we're about halfway, and then that last few inches is the hard part. Bear push-ups are hard from the get, right? So the whole method, the whole range of motion is difficult, meaning we get the intensity or the stimuli, the overload that we're hoping for. If you're not familiar with the overload principle, it's also in the course, but a quick synopsis is present a stimuli greater than was presented before, and that stimuli is what's going to create our body to get better and or adapt and or help us to achieve our goals. All right? So those are push-ups. You have your hand position, you have your elbow position, you have your hand width, you have your hips, and then you have your feet. Okay, all of those in alignment will help us to master our push-ups and be better at doing push-ups. Push-ups are a major exercise for most kids. It's easy for them to do once they learn it. Now they want to go and do bench press, and that's fine. We typically say when you can do 10 full range of motion push-ups, you're ready to start adding external weights, such as doing dumbbell and or bench press or barbell bench press. All right. Until then, yeah, we might, but for the most part, we focus. The majority of our time, we focus on doing push-ups because they're great for developing upper body strength. All right. Okay. Next, we're going to have lunges. Okay. All right. So another key exercise, right? It's one of our foundational movements. Now, here's a slight coaching option that you have. If I'm going to take a step, that's a lunge, right? So if I do this exercise, step forward and back, that's a lunge. If I go into the exact same position, but now I just go straight up and down, now it's a split squat. If your kids, your students, are having difficulty with the balance of a lunge. See how I have one foot in the air and sometimes they start to wobble? You can eliminate that issue by simply doing split squats. You get all of the benefit of the lunge without the lack of need for that balance because you are in that position. If they want to do the lunge and they continue to have balance issues, you can add other apparatus to help. A stick helps, whether they hold the stick like this or whether they plant the stick into the ground and then step. If you guys understand your base of supports, this extra base of support helps with my balance. So I can step and forward lunge. I can even alternate and make it a smooth lunge. I can also go up against the wall. You got my hand on the wall right here. I can now step. Okay, now you'll notice one thing. My hand is a little high for where I want it so that I'm not off balance when I get to the ground. A lot of times when we hold on to stuff, I tell them, put it belly button height so that if we're going to go down, see how now it's shoulder height? I don't want it shoulder height to start because then I go down. See how it throws off my movement? So a lot of times we'll say, start your grip or your hold position at belly button height so that when we go down, it's where our shoulder height is. Key note to understand. Now, you could also use a chair for balance. You could also use a squat rack. You could also use the TRX straps. Anything that provides an additional base of support will help with their balance for learning how to progress and do squats. Now, squats has multiple directional components to it. We can either do a forward lunge, or lunges, not squats, lunges. We can either do a forward lunge, we can do a reverse lunge, we can do a side lunge, and all of those are the basis of a lunge movement. That's what our key is. The basis of lunging is that lunge at something. All right? Now the question becomes, what's our stride length? If we have a shorter stride, it becomes quad dominant. A longer stride becomes hamstring dominant. So sometimes we'll specifically tell people we want to focus on the quads, so we'll take a short stride and go down. This is actually truly as low as I can get, but my quad is firmly firing right now. The longer my stride is and I get my depth, see how I can go lower? Now it's all hamstring. If you know about anatomy and the basis of movement, there is a variable for emphasis. Quad dominant emphasis, hamstring dominant emphasis, glute dominant emphasis, chest or tricep emphasis, and how we manipulate our joint movements determines that emphasis. On our website, fitnessbasedpe.com, go to our free resources, and you'll see a 20-minute video on manipulating movements, which will help you understand closed grip bench press is about the tricep. Normal grip with your elbows at 45 is about the pecs. We go over all that. Differences in pulling here versus pulling here for rows. That's on the website. You can check that out. That's also included in the course. So if you don't want to go today, you'll still be able to see that 20-minute presentation on how to slightly change our joint movements to manipulate our muscle actions. All right? But we talked balance. We talked stride length. Now we want to talk about, are we helping ourselves? What do I mean by helping ourselves? A lot of times our students will lunge and they'll place right here. It's generally okay. There's really no true issue with doing a balance help, because what we're doing is we're providing an additional base of support, which helps our students to maintain that balance so they're not wobbling right here. This right here allows them to help themselves. It does give a placebo effect of making the lunge easier, but think about it. They're just applying pressure into their body with their upper body weight. Are they really helping their legs move? Not really. What it's doing is it's helping with that balance. And it's giving that placebo effect of, oh, okay, I'll do this. And as long as they're not doing really horrible body positional stuff, like bending like this, it's typically okay. All right? And those are your lunges. All right? So, if you have any comments, you can comment now. But those are 3 major movements, okay? Key takeaways from today are joint movements determine muscle action, and muscle action will determine how we improve. There is foundational things that we need to focus on, such as where are our feet, okay? In a squat, we have that external rotation. We can go wider if we so choose. Some power lifters love to go wide when they do their squats. 100% completely okay. Where your width is determined by your determination. And you can rotate externally farther and farther the wider you go with your squats. But a lot of things become trial and error in practice for experienced lifters. Case in point. So some power lifters and or squatters, remember how I talked about your eyes looking straight ahead? They will actually look down. That way they're not getting distracted. And they'll still have perfect techniques, but they're looking down. They're not moving their head up and down, but they're focused on that position right there. That gives them the focus that they need. Personally speaking, I'm a down looker when I squat because I don't like keeping my head up. Okay? I don't like looking in the mirror per se. Most people love looking in the mirror when they squat. I'd rather focus my head down and just think about the squat technique. I'm thinking, am I doing this? What am I doing? And I will run through the movements or how they do it of tilt pelvis, knees out, lower back low, chest out, shoulders back. And I'll run through all those cues as I'm doing it. Still 30 years after learning how to do squats, 35 years after learning, I'm still running through that checklist. All right? And you may too. You can give your students those checklists. We actually have our checklist, which I'll post in the comments for later, which we'll send out with this video of a squat checklist that you can help your students with. And it's just sort of do this, don't do that, what to focus on and do with your squats. It's very beneficial and helpful. I'll get that out, okay? So, on our Facebook page, go there and vote. We're going to do a poll. Do you guys want to learn more about using equipment, or do you want to learn more about physical literacy, skill development? Our next one is either going to be on gym ball and BOSU for apparatus or equipment usage, or it's going to be on kinesthetic awareness for spatial or spatial targeting, spatial awareness and kinesthetic awareness. How to touch your fingers without looking at them, right? How to look away and still do that. That's kinesthetic and spatial awareness. Knowing where you are in a space. Like I can see how far away that stick is behind me and how far that wall is. I can go to the wall right there based off of knowing the distances, right? Without having to look at stuff. All right? So hopefully you guys found this educational and entertaining. We hope that you look forward to our future workshops and webinars. We hope that you want to take our personal trainer certification course. We're also going to be offering a cruise this summer where you can get 2 days of professional development while you're sailing the high seas. We're going to LA, from LA to Catalina, the island just off of LA, to Ensenada. We're going to have 2 days of professional development, 10 hours, and you can sign up for that course as well. You can sign up for that and we'll get you the information. If you're interested in that, just let us know. We'll get you all that information as well. But not too many people have done a professional development cruise, so that sounds very exciting to us, and we'd love to have you. Other than that, as usual, join our Facebook group, which is Stronger Together at Education Academy. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments, we're posting all the time to help you guys, help your audience, help your students, because it is about presenting better ways so that we can combat and or fight the rising levels of obesity and the children who want to have a sedentary lifestyle. A lot of kids don't want to participate in PE because of confidence. Being stronger builds our confidence. Being stronger and being able to lift weights builds our mental acuity, right? We want to build that confidence. We want to build self-efficacy. And a lot of times overcoming that teaches us how to be resilient, teaches us how to be mentally strong. And those are just a few of the benefits of being very, very strong. All right. Thank you, Denise. It's always a pleasure. I love helping you guys out. That's what I live for, basically. So that's all I have for today. If you do have any questions or comments, just please let us know. This recording will go out, so you'll be able to watch it again at your leisure. It'll probably go out tomorrow. I have to let it download and all that first. So, all right. Hopefully you guys liked our first presentation on StreamYard. Seems like a very good platform for us. So we'll go from there. All right. Thanks, guys.